Here we go. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this final webinar as part of the series we've been running this week. This final webinar is going to focus on the funding landscape, but focusing on the private funding opportunities. We know that in the blue economy and for early stage businesses, it can be quite challenging. So we're hoping that this webinar can provide some more information about what's available out there. So just quickly, I'm just going to touch on the agenda very quickly. My name is Pauline. I'm part of the international trade team at the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce, and I'm part of the sub-team who looks after the FundBest project within the Chamber. I'll just do a very quick introduction. If you've attended the previous two webinars, this is going to be something that you've heard before, so I'll be very brief. Then I'll hand over to Zach from the University of Manchester, who will be chairing today's session. And then finally, we'll go through the three funding tools that we're focusing on today. So we'll hear from Andrew Smith from Greenbackers Investment Capital. We'll talk about private equity and private investment. We'll then move to Javier from Bancamar, who will talk about banking and the role of banks in that kind of ecosystem. And finally, we'll move on to Johan, who will touch on the crowdfunding side of things. We'll go back to Zach, who'll tell us a bit more about the University of Manchester work with Smes, and then we'll open the session to a Q&A and a discussion with the panel. So if you've attended the previous two events this week, we've touched on Tuesday on an introduction to the blue economy and the opportunities in the key sectors. Yesterday, we touched on business support networks and how it can be very valuable for businesses to be part of a network to grow. And today, as mentioned, we'll touch on the private sources of funding. If you weren't able to attend the previous session, I'll send an email today or tomorrow to follow up on the series, and I'll include a recording so you can catch up on those. Whilst these webinars' objective is to provide information and raise awareness about the opportunities for all stakeholders, it's also a chance for you to jump in and ask questions or share any experience you think might be relevant to everyone who's attending today. So feel free when we open to the Q&A to ask any questions you might have for our speakers. So as mentioned, very quickly, I'll touch on the Chamber. We are the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. We're one of the partners on the programme in the UK with the University of Exeter. We're the largest accredited Chamber of Commerce in the UK. We cover the whole of Greater Manchester, and we provide a wide range of business support services, both to help businesses grow domestically and internationally. So any questions you might have on that, feel free to get in touch with myself after the event. So the series was delivered in a framework of FundBest. Some of you might be familiar with the project, as I know you've attended some previous events. But if you're not, FundBest, which stands for the Funding Atlantic Network for Blue Economy Technology Transfer, focuses on the technology transfer strategies to the SMEs from the Atlantic area, which are linked to the blue economy. As part of the pack, when I send the reminders and the information about this week, you will have received a flyer that has a lot more information about FundBest and the link to the website with more information. Just in brief, our priorities are to improve the information about the financing needs and the potential of technology transfers, which is what these events are doing, improving access to funds to finance adoption of innovation, and the contribution to the creation of new innovative products and services. We had businesses going through a coaching program to help them grow their business within the blue economy. The Interreg Atlantic Area Programme funds the FundBest project, which is part of the ERDF fund as well. And the programme supports cooperation, addressing shared regional challenges and innovative approaches to strengthen territorial and sustainable economic development. You can see on the left the 5 key areas part of the programme. We've got partners across all 5 areas. And so which is Ireland, UK, Spain, France, and Portugal. And you can see here more information about the partners. There will be someone in your region. If you want to connect, please feel free to get in touch, and we can connect you with the partners. And I'm very happy to see that in this week we've had delegates coming from all across those 5 key areas. So I'm really glad to see that we managed to reach everyone. So that's all for me. Sorry if you've heard this twice already. This is the last time you'll hear it. And I'll just hand over to Zach now from the University of Manchester. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pauline. And, you know, I'd like to formally welcome everyone to this session. I think it's going to be a really interesting session, is particularly for some of the SMEs sort of in the audience out there. We quite often sort of aware that finance is a bit of an issue for SMEs as they either sort of starting up, scaling up, or growing. But I think hopefully what we can particularly get out of this session is sort of the access or the awareness of finance, because I think sometimes it's a case of sort of maybe being in the right place at the right time or having the right connection. So hopefully through the sort of 3 or 4 talks you'll get today, it'll give you a bit more sort of opportunities of, finding out about different pots of funding, how you might access that, how you might find out a bit more information, and actually how that might help you as a business to grow or overcome any sort of finance issues you're having at the moment. We've got a sort of wide variety of talks today covering different forms of finance, so hopefully there'll be something for everybody there. With regards to any questions, feel free to sort of make a note, or you can drop them into the chat and we'll try to pick them up at the end from there. So without further ado, I'll pass across to Andrew from Greenbackers Capital Investment, who's going to do our first talk today.
Thank you, Serkab, and I believe my slides are going to be driven for me, which is super helpful. Could you go into my first slide now, please? It's a real pleasure for me to be here, Serkab, not least because I was born in Manchester, and that may not be obvious from my accent, of course, but I still have family there, and it's really great to be engaged. This morning, I've only got a few slides. People watching will be glad to hear. And I hope to give a small window into the world of private equity in the blue economy, which is very close to my heart. Next slide, please. Of course, I am obliged to say a little bit about our business, but I will only say a very little bit. We are these people, and we operate in many jurisdictions. And what we are is trying to get technologies that touch upon the blue economy adopted and funded. Next slide, please. Perhaps of more importance, and this is a bit of context as to why I am on your screen as opposed to somebody else. Whilst I was a private sector lawyer for some 35 years, please don't turn off, I then started running a fund for the Scottish Investment Bank, which invested equity as well as some debt into really interesting blue economy projects. These were first of a kind projects, and through that work, I became fully engaged with the blue economy in all of its aspects. Since then, I joined the Greenbackers team, and I've described what they do. But in that role, all of us do pro bono work, and the pro bono work, I've mentioned some of it here, it touches upon many aspects of the blue economy. And that gives me, as somebody who tries to get young businesses with technology or ideas that touch upon the blue economy, to get their technologies adopted, to get their ideas funded, that gives me a real good helicopter view of what is going on in the world. Next slide, please. So I want to spend a bit of time now talking about private equity and how it all works. The first thing to say is there are lots of different forms of private equity. Don't think of it as a single thing. The providers of the cash, the providers of the money, will have their own individual drivers. They'll have their own reasons for getting involved with your business. And key, first of all, to getting them interested, and then key to getting their money, is doing some research and really understanding why they are interested, why they might be interested or should be interested in what you're doing. And there's some examples here. I like to think of examples, and some of these are kind of macro examples, if you like. Things that we should all be aware of, but do have impacts as we go through and look at our individual options and decisions. So we talk a lot about sustainable finance still. Now, for me, that's a bit of a shame, because all finance should in fact be sustainable. but nevertheless, if you have something that touches on the blue economy, you're looking to get private equity into it, I think it's important that you talk about offering an opportunity for sustainable finance to find a home. And don't always think that you are asking for money. Often what you're doing is offering an opportunity for somebody who themselves is obliged to invest ethically or sustainably to find a project or a business that offers that possibility. Credit Suisse, big conservative outfit, has launched a fund to do exactly that. Just last week, a big Dutch public pension fund announced that they were withdrawing from Shell. Now, Shell was known as Royal Dutch Shell at one time, and Shell and Holland were completely embedded together. And what all this means is that this sustainable finance is really, really growing, and it's here to stay. Bond markets are absolutely beginning to attach differential rates to their products depending on carbon reduction performance. And your customers, those that you are selling into, are driving the responsibility to get carbon out of their businesses into their supply chains. And if you have something that helps that, all of that, if you can be aware of it when you're talking to the providers of finance, can help you have those conversations that will secure that finance for you. I wanted to mention 3 or 4 things that I'm working on now that involve leveraging private equity into businesses. Again, I think examples are super helpful. The ocean basins of the world, the North Sea here, they are looking to electrify. And if you have a technology that's going to help with that, then you will have a good chance of getting equity to support that, provided you're talking to the right people. If you're engaged with ports, there's electrification of ports coming down the track, a lot of concern about ships in port using their diesel gensets to keep hotel loads going. And so a lot of regulation, a lot of ports looking for that kind of infrastructure because a lot of ports don't have it. And unmanned surface vessels, USVs, are becoming more and more a reality. And if you can supply into that market, again, those providing equity into the sector might be interested. Another important aspect of being in the blue economy is the ability to attract talent. And this is important from an equity perspective because there's a real talent shortage of engineers, of others. And if you are in the marketplace for equity, one of the things that the equity providers will surely look at is your team and any gaps in your team. And if you have a sustainable blue economy business, your ability to attract young engineers, many of whom, men and women, are really keen on the sustainability and the ethical credentials of the businesses that they are joining. Next slide, please. So, couple of case studies again, just to talk about private equity. I spent some time looking at aquaculture. There is a specialist equity fund called Cuna del Mar, which is based out of Canada, which is actually run by the family that set up the Walmart supermarket chain. And they are trying to solve the problems of deep ocean aquaculture. They break up all of those problems and deal with them one at a time. And if you have a business that touches on any of that, so power, food for the fish, the different types of fish, the cages themselves that host them, all of that stuff, anchoring the cages themselves, these are strong opportunities in the blue economy. I want to say a few words about what I think is required to mobilize private equity further into the blue economy. We need informed public support, but by which I mean we've got to start picking winners and losers. I think that's something the public sector finds really hard to do. Those in the sector have got to show imagination and resolve. You have to be persistent if you want to secure equity in the sector, because doing anything in the ocean is regarded as quite hard, and doing anything that touches upon blue economy businesses, tourism, for example, is regarded as being particularly hard at the moment, of course, given the pandemic. One aspect which touches on today very much is blending the finance. We're here today to listen to other types of finance beyond equity. And I think putting packages of finance together that are sympathetic to one another, each type of finance taking the appropriate type of risk, is essential. So I think it's really important that you understand these different types of finance and what each one of them can do and the role it can. And then you've got to pick the right technologies. Now, look, I've got a couple of slides left. Next slide, please. I wanted to share this with you today because every human being who was alive in 1969 and all those who died before that, and even those born since 1969, because the stuff we're made of, is in this picture, this photograph, all of us, every single one of us, except, of course, the guy who took the photograph, who was Mr. Collins, the astronaut. And I think it's really important for us all to understand that we are absolutely all in this together. I've been at various events at the COP. I've made sure this photograph is in every single one of my presentations. And there is a little bit of a theme here because the finance community, with its debt, with its crowdfunding, and with its private equity, are all in this together as well. And typically, they are all in deals together as well. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, apart from the holding slide, and is a shameless plug for our own event, which is on Tuesday next week. And please, you can attend that online if you wish to. If you'd like to, please let me know. So my last slide just says, if you can move on to it, let's get going. Let's get on with this. I'm really looking forward to the other presentations and really looking forward to some questions. It's been my pleasure to join you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Andrew. That was really, really useful. And the point that really stood out for me, where you spoke about almost sort of flipping the script a little bit, and it's about sort of presenting the opportunity rather than the request for funding. And I think that's something maybe we all sort of need to think about a little bit, because, in these sort of situations, quite often we're almost sort of going cap in hand, but actually we're giving something for what we're getting. And I think that's sort of a very valid point. I'll pass over to a little bit more about his area.
So it's my turn?
Yep.
So thank you, everybody. First, I would like to thank you, the organizers, for inviting me to participate in this interesting webinar. And this is, as this is the final session, I would like to congratulate FundBest for the initiative and also for the success of the program. My name is Javier Fraga, and I'm the managing director of a department called Abancamar within a Spanish bank. Its name is Abanca. I will organize the presentation, first introducing our bank and briefly highlighting who we are. Second, I will remark the importance of the blue economy for Spain and mainly for Galicia, our region. And soon you will realize why we are very aware of the development of this industry, mainly based on fishing and aquaculture, but also tourism, logistics, port services, and specialization. Third, I will present our department. And then I will briefly highlight some initiatives that we manage and try to support in these activities. And finally, conclusions. So we can go through the next slide. Maybe the next and next and even next. So a brief presentation of our bank. We are a medium-sized bank with a high growing performance during the last years. And our origins and headquarters are based in Galicia, as you see. The most of our brands are in this region, but we have increased our presence in Portugal and Basque Country in the north of Spain So the most of our branches are located in countries and regions where the blue economy is very important on this GDP and also way of life. We have branches also in other countries in Europe and in America. In the next slide, you can see our main figures. I'm not going in detail, but here you have the whole numbers, but just saying that we are more than 6,000 employees with more than 67,000 millions on total assets, with high performance in solvency, liquidity ratios, and coverage for future risk. Next slide. Our business strategy is based on trying to go through specializations, as you can see. So we accompany companies, insurance, private banking, but also primary sector and consumer finance. Going ahead in this strategy, the specialization is a key factor for a very competitive sector. This is why we develop different departments, and this is why our department that I represent is born, and I will explain later on the presentation. Next, please. So now I would like to introduce you to the blue economy in Galicia. You will quickly understand why. I always said that the people that were born in Galicia or working in this region have received a heritage for our ancestors. This legacy was developed from several decades ago as a way of subsistence for previous generations, with courage that have been seen Galicia emerge as a leading region in some of the industry related with the blue economy. Here we have some figures. Galicia has 50% of the Spanish fleet, and this number will be higher if we include the boats that support the aquaculture industry, and also if we add the vessels that sail under not European flags because they belong to missions such holders, Spanish and other countries, and they fish in regions as Argentina, Namibia, Falkland, Iceland, UK, and other countries. So Galicia is the first region in producing products from aquaculture, mainly mussels, but also other species as turbot, sole, as an example. Regarding associations representing the sector, Galicia is also a leader within Spain and probably compared with the European Union. And finally, a very interesting point for me, that we have the 9 biggest companies in producing frozen seafood and canned products from the sea, mainly tuna. Next, so all these figures coming from this historical heritage have created a very professional ecosystem of associations and companies that supply services surrounding the industry, logistics, law services, freights, etc. I would like to remark also that the port of Vigo and Coruña are leaders within the European Union regarding the loads of frozen and fresh seafood. Also that the European Agency of Fisheries is based in our region, in Vigo. Finally, that accomplishing the previous information, there are institutions as Conchemar and FACO. The first of them ran one of the most important exhibitions of frozen seafood that took place on October. So as you can see, there's huge importance of the blue economy on our region. Next slide exists to show some examples of these important companies that are competing worldwide, exporting worldwide in more than 100 countries. So maybe you know some of them, like Pescanova or even Calvo, but with high performance even in the COVID era. Next. So 5 years ago, our company decided to release a new department, that is the one I lead, attending it's a unique department, as we know, within the Spain and Portugal too, attending all these sectors. In the next slide, you will see that the sectors that we attend, so from the origin to the market, so ship owners, the processing seafood, CPRs, the naval auxiliary industry, maritime transport, ports, logistics and services, also aquaculture, an important industry also, as Andrew said, like tourism, rental, jet imports, etc. No? The whole value chain of the blue economy. Next slide. We have more than our figures, more than 9,000 clients with a balance of more than 2,200 million regarding our business volume, with more than 90 agreements, and we have been involved in more than 100 operations regarding the financing on the fishing vessel. What is important for me is that this balance have continuously increased above the result of our bank. So this year we are more than 10% than we start the year. So we are very happy, and this means that the sector is healthy and doing very well, which is good news for us, for our department, our future. The next. This is how the balance is placed. As you can see, the most important and the processing and trading industry, and the canned companies, and also aquaculture is the contribution of each subsector. Our main contribution. In the next slide, I will explain you briefly what are the key aspects that we see that we can offer to the sector. No? From our perspective, the presence and the specialization present not only with physical branches, but being very close to the industry, and also participating on different programs to embrace their financial and economic problems and frames. With a special offer, with highly qualified professionals, and with very close relation with institutions, even private and public. We can go ahead. This is our presence in our territory. It's historical, and this is why I'm very close with this whole industry. I would like to remark that our logo is Amar Omar, it's love the sea. No? We'll love this logo, and we really love it. Go ahead, please. Regarding our human resources, our team is formed by high-profile professionals, not only in the front but also in our back office. Important the researchers or analysts ready to detect the strengths and the threats in advance to be effective in the financiation process. But it is very important for us, as a part of our team, the legal advisors. Maritime sector is in all its extents is very complicated sector in terms of law, including maritime law, but also implying different internal legislation. So our law team provides a high value added services in order to be effective. It is a need because, as you can imagine, financial sector is adverse to risk or to uncertainty. So the service supplied by our law team is mandatory to support a more complicated financial proposals. No? Next slide. So regarding the specialization, I'm sorry, but this is not translated to English anyway. I will give you a brief example of our portfolio of special products and services that we offer to the sector. Remember that it is a dynamic portfolio on demand of the new needs of the sector, and of course we have the finance and day-to-day activity on the industry, the long-term investments, but also services as specialized insurance, swap of commodities, advance of grants from the European Maritime Fishing Fund, maritime mergers, etc., etc. But what I would like to remark is that this portfolio is very dynamic, and we work closely with the sector to increase our offer. And now I'm just trying to finish. I will, in the next slide, I will enumerate some concrete financial and non-financial initiatives and opportunities and our goals to the future. First, collaboration. No? We can go to the next slide because this is like an index. We have more than 90 agreements with the sector. So blue growth and any growth in any sector need the agreements between public and private association. As Andres said before, we from Abancamar work hard to be the financial link between public and private and public institutions, from the resources, European funds, for example, to the investors. So we are widely active on collaborating with all the institutions. As you can see, the CPRs, the fishing vessels associations, aquaculture, and a large, etc. A second initiative in the next slide is very important for us. We have been very active. Is the renewal of the fleet. Here we see a weakness, but also an opportunity. The Spanish and Portuguese fleet has an average of more than 30 years. So if we like to include the new generation in the efficient sector, we have to enhance safety, accommodation of the crew, and otherwise young people have never been recruited to substitute the retiring process of the actual employees. So also we need better conditions of connectivity to offer new generations the possibility to communicate with their relatives. It is important our collaboration with high technological companies to finance the implement of devices improving the living conditions on board of fishing vessels. So we are very active in this process of the renewal of the Spanish fleet, as you can see the figures. So maybe last year and this year the figures are a little bit lower, but we expect next year that after COVID era that again going up with the figures. Another initiative is our historical another opportunity. This is okay. This is an initiative, a collaboration with the flags, or in Spanish, the Grupos de Acción Local del Sector Pesquero. In English, I think it's fishing local active groups. So we have been awarded as the best smart financing idea as a result for the collaboration with this group that trying to provide funds to the coastal areas, to the small promoters to improve their conditions and their businesses and employment, etc. The next initiative or collaboration is with the aquaculture sector. Andrew said before that it is very important, as the FAO highlights every year. So we have a problem. We have to feed the an increasing population, and the wild fish is stable due to control for quotas and etc. So there is a big opportunity on aquaculture. So we support the whole sector. In Galicia is a very important sector with the mussel, but also with sole and sea bass and etc. So we think that it's very important to have mixed financing between commercial banks, as we are, and other source of funds, because this is a still very risky business, but necessary for the future. We also would like to remark that we will support an exhibition that will take place next year in Galicia, March 22, where all the providers or the whole value chain should campaign and develop these new businesses. So I'm almost finalizing. Just for you, another opportunity is like the structured finance as tax leave. We have been very active in this kind of financiations that give support to the CPR industry to compete with the wild competition of Asia and China. And this is also an opportunity for investors that receive higher returns than they receive in a scenario of low interest rates. Here you can see our track record. It is high value services that our corporate department gives to the sector. And okay, another participation that we have. We think that we here in the sector, we have a lack of qualified employees. So this is important, and this association that we support. This is an institution that release law papers to the sector where the whole value chain is integrated and based from a project that comes from the port of Vigo. I will invite you to visit its website because it is very interesting. We are members of the board of this institution. And just giving some clues about corporate social responsibility. We have several programs of physical removing waste for the coast and beaches, and also ports, and also another programs for training and sensitiveness with the planet and financial basis for young entrepreneurs and women. And finally, I would like just to share that Blue Growth should be balanced with alignment, of course, with the SDG. We have signatures of a lot of principles, but I would like to remark that we have been one of the first bank with a signatory of the sustainable of the ocean principles. And last, with the conclusions. So the coastal regions have the opportunity to develop blue economy opportunities. Specialization is a key factor to success, as I tried to explain in my presentation. The finance sector has the role to enhance the opportunities and to promote big and small investors to be able to develop and take advantage of the grants from the European funds. Fishing sector is achieving good results, and European fisheries embrace good practice, facing a lack of level playing field. Aquaculture is the future and will lead the future on providing healthy products to the consumers, and commercial banks and other sources of funds should commit with the development of the blue economy that should embrace the recovery, relying, of course, on sustainability, and the SDGs. So thank you very much. I'm very glad if you have any questions. And thank you again for FundBenz for inviting me to this interesting program.
Thank you, Javier. That was a really interesting session. And I think what I would take away from that is, to always sort of do your homework, because there's definitely sort of very specialist advice available there. And what that means is you've got people who are not only knowledgeable in sort of your sector, but also have a genuine sort of passion for that and helping you as a business in those areas. So thanks again for that. I'll just pass over to Johan now, who's going to give us a bit more detail on sort of the world of crowdfunding and some of the opportunities that are there. So Johan, if you're ready, happy to pass over to you.
Yes, thank you, Zach, and thank you all. Thank you for being here as well. My name is Johan. I'm one of the founders of, Orange Bird is the company name. And the first thing we did was to develop a crowdfunding platform back in 2011 in Portugal. So we are based in Lisbon, and basically we have kind of the Portuguese Kickstarter version of crowdfunding in Portugal, but we also implement white label crowdfunding platforms for a number of customers. We've had banks, local municipalities, and international customers implementing crowdfunding platforms. So that's what we do basically. And I wanted to talk to you about crowdfunding as a financing tool for the blue economy. And the first question you have to ask yourself is crowdfunding right for you, right? I mean, that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself for every financing tool, and crowdfunding is no different. And so what do you need to think about when thinking about crowdfunding? I mean, is it just getting money from the internet, or is there something else to think of? And well, if we can look at the next slide, please. The first thing to know, of course, is what is crowdfunding, right? So probably you all know what it is, but it's about raising small amounts of money from a large number of persons via a crowdfunding platform, so via the internet, right? I mean, this is something that has been done for millennia. Of course, we have financed projects by asking people to contribute with small amounts, right? But this is rather new because we have the internet now, so that allows us to reach a very vast audience, and hopefully, fund our project with also large amounts of capital. And so there are three main types of crowdfunding. We have non-investment models, that is where backers or investors are not getting anything in return that is in a financial form. We have the equity models or the debt models. So I will go into detail into one of these three main types of crowdfunding. So basically, crowdfunding is about getting money from the internet, from individuals, but also it's about giving back to these individuals, right? So the way we project owners give back to the individuals will define the crowdfunding type that we're doing, right? So if we go to the next slide, please. The first type of crowdfunding is non-investment based, which means we're not giving any financial return to the people that are supporting our project, that are financing our project. And that's mainly rewards-based crowdfunding. And so in that case, well, what we want to do is we want to give back to the backer. We call them backers in this case, because they're not really investors, not investing, but they're backing our project. And we want to recognize their contribution with, well, our product, right? So usually these kind of projects have products to offer, and they want to finance the production of a given product. And well, in return, they offer the backer that product, that very product, usually with an early bird price, right? But it's not always the case. Sometimes you are financing more than just a product. You're financing cultural projects, you're financing social projects. Sometimes it's a mixture of several types of projects. If we take a look at this example here, this was in Portugal a couple of years ago, and there was this refugee crisis, if you remember, from Syria. And this team wanted to open a restaurant that hired almost exclusively Syrian refugees here in Lisbon. And well, these Syrian refugees knew how to cook, and so they could offer an authentic Middle Eastern meal in this restaurant. And one of the ways they found to finance the restaurant was with crowdfunding. And so, of course, what they wanted to offer the backers was, of course, the opportunity to participate in this noble project where you could, create jobs for Syrian refugees. And this is in line with what Andrew said earlier, right? You have to find the right motivation for your backers or investors. And so in this case, in rewards-based crowdfunding, you have to use a lot of emotion, and you have to try to create that link with your audience and try to find what motivates them. So of course, what motivates them in this case is to support this noble mission, but also you can offer them some of the stuff you're going to produce. So in this case, the restaurant is going to produce meals. And so one of the ways to thank the backers was, offering a jar of hummus, or maybe a full meal at the restaurant once it was open, or maybe a workshop to go and try to learn how to cook with these people. And so, not only you're getting capital from your backers, but you're also getting customers as well, right? So you're getting your first customers with the crowdfunding campaign. Your restaurant is not even open yet, but you're already committing people to go to your restaurant and try your food, and also promote your project, right? So these people are going to be very committed to the cause, and they'll probably be your ambassadors as well. So as you can see, I mean, not only you are financing your product, but you're also marketing your product. You're also building a community. You're also building a customer base. And these are, you know, as important in crowdfunding or in rewards-based crowdfunding as the capital itself. And actually, many brands use rewards-based crowdfunding, not for the capital. I mean, you have Hasbro, you have Sony, you have, you know, big brands that obviously don't need the capital to develop a new product or to produce it, but they use it, of course, to test the market, right? So they go and see, well, are there enough people to that are willing to support or that are willing to pre-purchase the product? And if there is, well, then they will go ahead and produce that particular product, right? So that's the first type of crowdfunding. If we go to the next slide, and well, you don't need to read everything. We will share the presentation with you guys if you want to read it in detail. But yeah, usually, I mean, ideally, you have to have some sort of product to give back to your backers. If you don't have, well, in your particular case, if you're in the blue economy, you usually have this kind of social purpose as well, this blue or green purpose behind that. But ideally, you should be able to thank your backers, and you should be able to deliver some kind of product to their door. So that's ideal, right? That's what's ideal. Ideally, you should come to the crowdfunding platform with your community, a community that is ready to support you and that is ready to give the dynamics to your crowdfunding campaign. Because of course, you know, if I go to a campaign page and I see that there are absolutely no backers, well, I will not be very motivated to support you, right? But if I see that there's a lot of people joining, then I will feel more enthusiastic about it. It's like visiting an empty restaurant. If you see an empty restaurant, you don't want to go in. There must be something wrong. But if you see that there's movement, then you are more motivated to go there. So ideally, you have a product. Ideally, it's business to consumer, because the main target are individuals, right? So the main traffic in these crowdfunding platforms are individuals. And so it's not ideal for business to business businesses, for example. All right, in the next slide, we talk about equity-based crowdfunding. So in this case, your investors are getting usually shares in return, right? So this gives the opportunity to the individuals to be a shareholder of your company. So again, this motivation is important because you are giving the opportunity to non-accredited investors, so retail investors, people like you and me, to directly invest in companies and get shares of from those companies. So again, there are several motivations here. There's of course the financial one. I'm funding a project because I want the project to succeed and to grow, and so my shares will be worth a lot more in the future. But of course, I want to be part of the project. I have the opportunity to be kind of a micro business angel and directly be part of the company that I believe in and that works in the sector that I'm interested in, or that is looking to solve a particular problem that I want to solve as well. So that's also a very, very interesting motivation for the investors, and that's a good opportunity for you to offer that to your investors. So as you can see, well, in this particular example, this company was looking to raise £1 million, and it was willing to give back 20% of equity, right? So if you invested, you could be part of that company. So you can see the share price was priced at £25 per share. And a very interesting thing also in the UK is that usually you can have tax reliefs if you invest in this kind of crowdfunding. So that's a win-win as well. if we get to the next slide, please. So again, we will share the presentation. You don't have to read it. But just a couple of best practices here. Seedrs, which is one of the main crowdfunding platforms in the UK, recommends having also, you know, a community of investors that is ready to invest in your project, because the you know, the crowdfunding platforms themselves cannot guarantee that they're going to get all the investors to your particular project. So it's useful to have your own investors already in the beginning, and then, you know, around 30 or 40% already committed, to then get the rest of the capital from the community. And according to Crowdcube, which is the other main platform in the UK, companies are able to raise from seed capital, so 50k to 250k, to even growth capital, so more than 750k euros in the platform. So as you can see, it covers a pretty good range of companies and their phases. Of course, most platforms will require having launched the product, so you should have at least a prototype or at least a product. Ideally, show some early revenue. You have to show that it's actually starting to work, right? So you have to show the potential of growth, and you cannot do that with a simple Excel file or a PowerPoint presentation. So you should, your company must exist. You should be starting to sell, and you need to demonstrate that with the right investment you're going to raise, you're gonna be able to sell a lot more and be more profitable. Okay, if we go to the next slide, yes, the last main type of crowdfunding is debt-based crowdfunding, and that's where the investors are actually lending money to the projects. So, you know, project owners, instead of turning to one institution, to a bank, for example, they turn to hundreds or thousands of investors that are willing to lend money to the company, and then earn back interest on that operation. So in this particular case, we see that this company, which is an aquaculture company, has raised 150,000 euros from more than 700 investors, and that it's willing to pay back 4.5% of interest a year, and it's going to do it in 1 year, right? So that's one of many examples that exists in this world. And well, it's also interesting to know that this tool, this financing tool, is regulated in Europe. So it's regulated in all countries, and there's also unified regulation that is taking place in all Europe. So this is not really alternative finance anymore. It's already regulated by all of the regulators in Europe, and so, you know, you have to know that there are rights for the investors, there are rights for the project owners, there are rights for the crowdfunding platforms, but also obligations from each of the stakeholders, and that's what makes this interesting, what makes it work, and what will make it work in a European level in the very near future. So if we go to the next slide, well, we can see some of the best practices for this kind of crowdfunding. You have to have an operating company. Most of the times, crowdfunding platforms will require you to have already some revenues, and you should be able to demonstrate that you can pay back what you're borrowing to the investors, and so you know, you can borrow as little as 5k to as much as 500k, according to October, which is one of the main lending platforms in Europe, in 1 to 5 year terms. So this depends, of course, and everything depends on the crowdfunding platform that you choose. So you will choose the crowdfunding platform that is best suited to your particular venture and to your particular crowdfunding type as well, to your particular geography. And so if you're in the UK, of course, you're going to turn to English platforms. If you're in Portugal, for example, you might be more interested in Portuguese platforms. That depends a lot on your customer base. Next, please. I think that's it for me, and I hope to have some questions in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Johan. That was really useful. I think one of the sort of key things that sort of struck a chord with me is sort of the motivation. How do you sort of present your offer on these platforms, and what's the motivation for somebody to then invest in you? So no, that's really useful. Thank you for that. I'm just going to give a very brief quick 5 minutes on the University of Manchester, just give a bit of an overview of the university and actually some of the work we do with SMEs and some of the pots of funding we have available as well. So for those of you that don't know about the University of Manchester, obviously based here in Manchester, but we're the biggest physical university within the UK, and we're actually split across 3 faculties. So we're the Faculty of Science and Engineering, Faculty of Biology, Medicine and Health, and the Faculty of Humanities, which also includes our business school. And we have a business engagement team that's based within the university, but sort of mixture of deployed either out to faculties or based centrally. And we really work with industry in helping them overcome their challenges. Now that can take a variety of different sort of methods of engagement. That could be sort of using academics as consultants, collaborative research, access to equipment and facilities, student recruitment, whatever that might be, but we really focus it actually on the company and their needs rather than trying to sort of push out one method of engagement or one way to interact with us. One of the things we do and we do very well as well is we have a few specific programs of engagement for SMEs. So we have some ERDF funded programs, and they align with some of our cyber and AI, some stuff around graphene and taking advantage of graphene. We also do. We also have a peer network of small companies where they sort of come together and learn from each other, and we try and sort of facilitate that. And then the other thing I just wanted to touch on very briefly is we also have pots of funding where we have internal funding that can help overcome challenges and develop small projects. So that can go anything from a 1-month project to a 1-year project. And that's really about sort of looking at the industry problem, putting a bit of funding behind it, maybe a proof of concept, proof of feasibility. This is the research, this is the sort of technology, how do we work together, and does this work? And then what we do quite well is then we then go outside to maybe places like Innovate UK, tap into their funding to maybe do more of a developed and a longer term project. So we do a lot of knowledge transfer partnerships, which some of the companies may or may not be aware of, but that's an Innovate UK funded scheme. And again, that's something we do very well with as a university, and something we use to sort of facilitate some of our external engagements. Like I said, there's lots to offer and lots we can do, and by all means feel free to either reach out to myself or reach out to some of the others, because I think that's something that's come out quite a bit through these sort of presentations and through this series of talks, is sometimes it's actually, you may not know the person you need to go to, but actually tapping into your networks is quite a key thing. And whether it's sort of the chambers or some of the others around the room, we can help facilitate those discussions and put companies in touch with the right people who can help them really and sort of support them in their growth and their journey. That was sort of it from me. So we've got some time for questions. So I've got a couple of sort of maybe pre-prepped questions, but I'll open the floor out to anybody else if they had anything immediate, whether they sort of want to raise their hand or drop something into chat, and we can pick it up from there. While everyone's having a bit of a think, one of the things I sort of put out to the panel or the presenters really is sort of how do SMEs sort of raise their awareness of these funding opportunities? How do they sort of obviously accessing that?
We've slightly missed you there, Sakab. I think you kind of jumped.
Apologies. So while everyone's sort of having a think about questions, one I was going to put out to the presenters was how do SMEs sort of raise their awareness of some of the funding opportunities? How do they tap into what's out there?
Well, look, I'm happy to kick off with that, Sakab. I think the obvious and easy thing to say is Google is your friend. But you need to commit to do research. Events like this, terrific. The University of Manchester clearly has a great deal of knowledge and willingness to share that. We are the same at Greenbackers. If anybody has any questions they want to raise, if they want to speak with me, I'm very happy to act as a signpost to things I think may be helpful. There's no cost or anything like that involved in any of that stuff. But we talk to many people. You just have to get your elbows out. You have to get your fingers on your keyboard, and you just have to find out. And yes, it can be a little bit tough at times, but there is an enormous amount of help out there, and just dedicate the time to it. Don't make it something you do as an extra, as a last minute. Whatever you're doing in your business needs money of some sort, and plan that in exactly the same way as you would a complex engineering operation. You put some effort into it, and you'll get there in the end.
Thank you. Javier or Johan, did you want to comment on that as well? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think crowdfunding is now more and more visible, I would say, but still there's a lot of work to do to promote crowdfunding as a financing tool. And well, I hope that SMEs, as Andrew was saying, are doing their research, and they're bumping into this financing tool, and they come talk to us, right? So as Andrew was saying, it's important to engage with the actors to understand better what is needed, and how and if they can resort to this kind of financing tool. So we're also open to get any questions, but I know that all of the crowdfunding platforms are the same, because we're very interested to get good projects in our platforms, right? So it's a two-way effort. We of course do a lot of efforts to try to promote our platforms out there, and well, that's the challenge, of course. But we hope that looking to one another will result in interesting matches.
Thank you. Javier, did you have anything to add to that? I think it's been so fairly well covered, but you just unmute, have you?
So from the traditional bank sector, as we said, we have to be very aware and to collaborate all together, from the traditional funds to the new sources, as we have an example in this program. So luckily, we have been very successful of having projects in our tables, but as we said, it is important to look for another sources, and I find interesting the statements that our colleagues said.
Andrew, I don't know if you've picked it up, but there's a question specifically for you on the chat from Laura.
Yes, I'm just having a look at the chat now. Somebody's also asked me about joining our event. Just send me an email to andrewsmith@greenbackers.com, and I'll confirm that how you can log on. So let me just get this from excuse me.
Quite a long question. So Laura, if you want to unmute yourself, you can also ask Andrew directly.
Hi. I'm looking at investment into companies that capture carbon.
Yeah.
And obviously that's, completely changed, I suppose, investment potential for a lot of companies, especially in the blue economy.
Yeah.
What do companies, especially investment companies, look for when investing in a company for carbon capture?
So I've been at various events at COP this week, which is in my hometown in Glasgow, and carbon capture is clearly, of the moment alongside hydrogen. I have to say there's a degree of caution around carbon capture as an investment-ready business. There's a sense in which some of the technology and some of the technical problems of capturing carbon, storing it, are still to be solved, and that does lead to caution from equity type money because of the risk involved. Where I think there is appetite, though, in terms of carbon and its use as opposed to its capture, is in things like using emitted carbon to create fish food, which is actually happening in a Drax power station down in England. There's a pilot project going on. The fish food being created is of very high quality and much needed by the aquaculture industry, as I'm sure Abby would know better than I. And so I would, if you're interested in carbon capture, I think that process in itself is going to take a lot of capital, huge amounts of capital. I do think, though, there are some interesting opportunities in using carbon and employing it in other ways. I don't know, Laura, if that begins to answer your question.
It does, but I'll follow up with an email if you.
Please do that, yes. I'm happy to respond. I'm just putting an email address into Charles, who's asked me about our event, and I'm happy to share it. If anybody doesn't wants to do that, I'm sure Pauline would pass on my email. Pauline, please do, if anybody gets in touch, pass on my address.
Yeah, no problem, and I'll share the slides as well, so you can see the details.
Okay.
Brilliant, thank you. Have we got any other questions from the group? Anyone else in the audience got a burning question for the presenters?
Well, I might ask Andrew, how do you see your so the green funds and the green investment tools? Do you think that they're still looked at as a less profitable funds, and do you think that traditional funds are going to focus more and more on green or sustainable ventures, and are we going to be able to get to the point where it's absolutely stupid not to be investing in sustainable projects, such as, I don't know, it's going to be stupid to invest in oil because it has absolutely no future in this world? Do you think we're getting to that point?
Yes, I say with absolute certainty that we are getting to that point. And getting to that point means we might be a few years away, but we are definitely getting to that point. I can point to some really hard examples. The Treasury Officer of Anglian Water, our massive infrastructure business, was on a panel with me and openly talking about the fact that in raising their latest bond financing for their own business, they were faced with differential pricing partway through that bond that charged them more if they failed to reach agreed carbon reduction measures. I've been in shipping conferences this week in Glasgow that have talked about exactly the same thing. Very interesting for me that the very conservative banking businesses that tend to support the ship owners are already employing tools which track the emissions of the ships which they fund. And if the emissions of those ships exceed agreed norms, agreed targets, then once again, differential pricing kicks into the debt products provided. And again, potentially Javi would know more about this than I, but I think when you see big institutional type finance beginning to attach differential pricing to the products that they're selling into the marketplace. That's a very strong signal that sustainable financing, that financing into these sectors is absolutely focused on decarbonization. And the drivers for all of this come from the fact that banks themselves have shareholders, banks themselves have stakeholders, and those stakeholders and those shareholders are driving those institutions to be part of the solution. So, it's a really good question, but I'm sorry it's a long answer, but yes, the short answer is yes.
So I would like to say also that we have put a lot of efforts on releasing our first emission of green bonds. I totally agree with both of you. It's a need, I think personally that we have a problem of traceability that somebody should solve, not to have this green washing bonds. What is green? What is brown? This is important to go forward, and the regulators should advance on these remarks. So totally agree. And as our example, we have released 1 month ago a green emission, which is necessary with high demand. So the market is asking for this kind of bonds.
And the market the market must financially justify these investments, right? So we have to go from, there's the will, there's the regulation or the obligation to actually, it's simply just more profitable to invest in this kind of ventures than in traditional or non-sustainable ventures. And I hope we will get there soon.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from anyone else? I mean, by all means, happy sort of reach out to any one of us afterwards. Pauline will sort of share the slides and contact details, and I'm sure we'd all be happy to sort of pick up any discussions outside of today's session and really try and sort of lend our support and help where we can. So I think we'll wrap things up there. I'd like to thank everyone for sort of attending and being active participants today. I'd like to thank all the presenters for their time and keeping to time as well. That's always quite important with a jam-packed session like this. So yeah, thank you all, and hopefully speak to you all soon.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Zach as well for sharing.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. A
Bye.
pleasure.